Alright, so we are back in. I have it all blocked up with cribbing. I've got it leveled as close as I want it. Now what I did differently on this that I didn't do when it was flipped the other way is on this one, I didn't support the center of the trailer. I have it supported in the front, got it supported in the back. A lot of times you'll see these light duty trailers and they'll look kind of like they have an arch like this where they've been overloaded and the back's been bent or the front's been bent or both. And what I'm going to do is not support the middle, and as I'm working I have some welding to do front to back. If it ends up with an arch like this, I'm not upset because you know, it wouldn't hurt anything within reason. And I noticed this here, I don't know if it'll show up in camera, but this box tube rail on the top does, it not only bows out, but it kind of leans out this way and then comes back. And it's, you can see that right in that fender right there. You see how it's, the front of it is leaned in, the back, or the front's leaned out on the fender's leaned in the rear, if I said that right. This side is a little more obvious. The top rail is leaning out like this. You can see how the top is versus the angle iron mainframe right here. And the fenders tell the same story. As you can see right there. It is what it is. All I'm going to tell you that the things that I'm noticing are things I'll know to be careful on when I build one. Oops, I'll let that slip. So next step is we're going to get all the wood off of it, and I have some welding to do on the inside on both sides, so let's get that off and get at it. So the first thing I'm doing is, you remember this cross member used to be crooked, extremely crooked. So I've cut it loose at both ends. In fact, you can see how far off it was. That is 2 1/4 inches slid back. So I've got that all cleaned up and ready to go. I'm gonna weld that in. And the next thing I want to do is, if anybody's ever used a utility trailer with the deck between the fenders, you know what a struggle it is sometimes to get anything strapped down in between the fenders, because there's nowhere anywhere down low to hook a strap to. So what I'd like to do is cure or remedy that situation, or give us an option at the same time while adding strength to the trailer. Because if you remember, this trailer main frame all the way down there is nothing more than 2x3 angle iron 3/16 thick. So what I've decided to do is, I had a couple pieces of angle iron sitting around here, and it is 2 inches by 2 inches. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to run this all the way up to the front angle iron here. So we'll be taking that piece out that the wood sits underneath. We're going to remove that, and then I'm going to take and drill holes. I'm going to drill 1 1/4 inch holes in this 2 inch wide piece of steel every so often, all the way down through to the very end. That will solve the tie points, because on these trailers, you know, basically you're tying to most of the time these. Otherwise, on this particular trailer, there's nothing else to grab to but these, and these are just, you know, just thin steel, and they bend really easy. So if you're using one of these straps, not such a big deal. But if you're using a 2 inch strap and really trying to, you know, clamp something down, you know, you end up bending them constantly. And not only that, they hook here and then they rub right here on this, and we don't want that. So I'm going to create tie points all the way down through there, and that's going to give us a lot more options. Now, I chose 1 1/4 inch because I drilled a hole in a scrap piece of steel and tried to hook each one of these in it and see how it would work. So what I find is, the biggest problem is this style of hook, because it's so closed here. It needs to be able to come down like this and back up, or it has to be able to fall in the hole with this part and then hook. So these are the least favorite option on this trailer. I'll probably use mostly these style, and probably predominantly this style, because I'll be using this to move our tractor back and forth to West Virginia to mow that property. And our tractor is a Ford 1710, I think, 1720, whatever. It's a four-wheel drive, smaller, category 2 tractor, I think, on the 3-point, little diesel, whatever, with a 72-inch mower. So I'll be strapping that down to this trailer to get it down there, and my wife's little mini truck. I don't know what the tractor weighs, but we'll be taking the mower and the brush hog with us, so the trailer is adequate, that's for sure. So I want to have a good way to chain everything down, strap it down, whatever. We won't be using chains and binders on this. This trailer's not big enough for something like that, but that's the plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of looking at my layout right now to see how far apart I want to place those holes for the tie straps. So I'm going to work on that and get the drilling. Alright, all 20 holes drilled, a little over a half hour on one battery. Mag drill works pretty good. So that way, and hook it and turn it somewhat. I won't be able to turn it 90 degrees because it'll stop on that, but it ain't gonna come out. Once it gets on that edge, it's more than adequate. I'll be pleased as punch with that. I want to make some hooks to put the safety chains in when the trailer isn't hooked to a truck. I'm going to put them on the frame. So this is a perfect diameter. This is some shocks I just took off my wife's minivan. It's about the right thickness, perfect diameter. So let's knock the other one out of here and get them cleaned up. Okay, so moving on to the front jack. I had made that plate for the top out of what I thought was 3/16. Apparently it's not. I looked at it a little closer, it's not. And I believe the top plate that this mounts to should be at least that thickness of material or better. That is 3/16. So what I'm going to do is I've got this piece quartered. I'm going to take a plasma cutter, cut it out, and I'm going to go right now and see if I can find a hole saw so I can get a better cut on that hole so it fits around the jack better. So let's see what we can find. All right, so I got that piece cut. I was able to find a 2 1/4 inch hole saw, and it works beautiful. Takes a little finessing to get it just down in there, but man, she's snug. So next thing I'm gonna do is get this thing all squared up the way I want it, center punch my holes, and go ahead and drill in by hand. And I got the holes all drilled. I was gonna tap them, but I think it's smarter just to put nuts and lock washers on the bottom. That way when I have a problem with that jack, I don't have to worry about bolts breaking off in that plate, because that plate's pretty thick. I end up going with a piece of quarter. So yeah, okay, let's keep moving on. I know it's loud, the compressor's running, but I'm working on some braces now. All right, got my braces fitted. It wasn't exactly a 90-degree angle on my piece, so I had to grind a little bit. Plasma cutter isn't exactly 100% accurate, you know, but anyways, now I'm ready to go ahead and weld it in. It's looking pretty decent fit. It was pretty jagged on that end, but I needed to, you know, use that bottom. That's all I had to work with, so it'll just have to do. All right, so my gussets are in, and I also finished the top weld on here, and so the front of this is all complete now. I want to put a winch in this trailer. This trailer, again, 7,000 GVW, can carry around 5,000, 5,500, something like that. I have to figure out where's the best place to put the winch. So I'm looking for some pieces of steel to mount that winch to, and I came across this in my scrap pile. Sometimes I buy this stuff from a fabrication shop. They'll have things that weren't quite bent right, or something wasn't right about it, much like the extensions I had made for Justin's ambulance, if you remember that project. But sometimes, you know, that stuff just goes in a scrap pile. So I'll buy it, never know what I'll need it for, but you know, nothing else. It's steel. So that's what this is. This is a little heavier than I need. It's 3/8 steel. I hate to use it on that because it's just, man, it's just too heavy. I'm gonna see if I can make do with something like this instead. I'm gonna go measure that winch again. And I have this truck frame here that would give me enough length. The problem I have with this is I don't like the waste truck frame, because you know, it's so large and so thick and so strong. I'd rather not use that. I was going to use this, 6 inches wide, 3 inches tall. The problem we end up with is right where that roll is right where it meets in here, and I really didn't want to lay welds down in there. So, and plus that's new. This is 6 inches wide as well and 4 inches tall. So the fact that it's 4 inches tall works much better with my plan. Now this is just a scrap piece that a friend of mine dropped off, and the fab shop was making something with 4-inch lights, I guess, and it didn't work out. They're off on their measurements here. You can see how close it is here, and then up here it gets farther and farther away. What we're going to do is use this to our advantage. We're going to put that right between the two pieces of C-channel, and I'm going to cut it out open, so it makes it really easy to get to the winch for the bolts and all that kind of stuff, and it'll be equally centered in here, so it'll work out just fine. moving right along on the winch mount. That tube over there is put in like this. It's not plumb, so that took a little bit more plasma cutting than I wanted. So did this one, because it's not actually in there square. I put it back where it was, but I didn't check it. My mistake. So now I got this all cleaned up. I'm getting ready to make a plate to fit right here inside it so we can weld it and cap that off. So I took, seeing how it's not this, okay, if I made a plate like that, you can see how much short it would be, because this is an angle. It gets longer. So I just cut a sliver, and I've cleaned up with the flat disc on the inside. I'm going to trace it on some metal and make a cap for each end. Alright, we're moving right along. One of the reasons that I cut this around here was so that I could get this winch in here and shove it back as far as I can, because I want to put a toolbox in here, and I don't want the winch to stop me from having a toolbox. So with doing that, it creates its own little problem. I want to use this winch. It's off of my PJ hydraulic dovetail trailer, and this is a 9,500 pound winch. I have one that's 12,000. I'm going to put the 12,000 on it, and I figured we'd just use this one on here. However, you know, it creates a little issue. We don't have enough clearance here. I've decided I'm going to take the solenoid box and the relays and just put them inside my toolbox with the battery, and then I'll just make a cover that covers up this here, or do away with it. It's not uncommon just to see them with little boots that go over top of them, and I may have some of them. So I'm going to take all this apart. We'll put the solenoid in the toolbox. I'll make little cables that actually hook down on the motor and hook to these solenoids, just remote mounted. And then we're going to change the controller, because that controller over there was set up on the end, but it was a recoil. So every time somebody used it, they were stretching on that trailer, and it wore the pin out on the inside of the connector. It's just a bad idea. It's far too tight of a coil for this situation, for as light duty as the connector was. So what we're going to do is run a hard wire connector. We'll put in like it only needs these two and a ground. It's controlled by ground. The switch controls the relays. This was power for a light, and there was another one for possibly overcurrent or something. I'm not sure. It was cut off. There was no place it was hooked to. It was just an extra wire, so maybe it was nothing. But I'm going to disconnect all this, get this apart so we can get it in the toolbox, so that I can lay my marks out and get everything drilled out and start welding this thing in. Alright, that'll work. Now I got it centered in there. I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and pull that out of there and get my holes drilled for the actual winch mount. Let's see how close we are, or how far off, whichever way you look at it. This Fairlead mounting plate is hanging over about an inch. You can see where the winch mount is, so I think I'm just gonna come in here and take that little bit off. Alright, I'm all done with this. This was a little tricky. This is extremely thin, this is thick, and you know, I'm not a welder, so I had to do my best. I welded it down across the front, same thing around here, and then I stitch welded the back. Did a full weld there from this point there. Did this one and skip a little, you know, do a little weld, so on and so forth. So that ought to hold it. Well, I got the first piece of angle iron all in and welded. I welded on top by the hole and at the bottom underneath the hole. So hopefully I get the most strength there. Anywhere I came in contact with a cross member, I just grabbed it again. But I had to get it in here and clamp it tight because I need to be up against it, but I think a helmet's in the way. But you can see up there, it takes a kick to the right is what it is. Every time you work on something like this, it's compromised. You just, you know, what can you do to make the lesser of the evils? So next thing I need to do is take this piece and fit it for in here, because I'm going to put, you see I got one hole here. It's like 1 inch from the edge. And I'll do the same thing here, 1 inch from the edge probably, and then I'll put one in the middle and then 1 inch from an edge back here. I haven't decided what I'm doing across the back of this. Whatever it's going to be, it'll be recessed. I don't want anything sticking up, because every time you bring a mower or something on there, you're constantly catching it as it is. So I'll get that figured out here next. One thing I forgot to mention, if it looks like that angle iron is sitting kind of like this, it's because it is. I use 2x2. That channel was 2x3. So in order for me to get the bottom in to where I could weld it on the side instead of underneath, I had to kick it just a little bit, which I don't think is gonna be a big deal. It doesn't bother me a bit, especially when by doing that I bring this part down a little bit, because my decking's only 1.5 inches and that's 2 inches plus, so it's not gonna hurt anything. It'll be just fine. All right, so I've gone through, ground out the welds for the cross members and re-welded all of them just to be safe. And I went ahead and cleaned this up here. Oh, I did leaf springs too, leaf spring hangers. I went ahead and ground all that out, so we're ready to go. I got this all drilled, all 20 holes are drilled. Only thing left to do on that is clean up the edge here and here, and we can weld it in place. Been working my way all the way to the back. Now I'm ready to fit the piece that goes back in here. Those 2 pieces of angle iron, I got them cheap because at the very end there was a bend in it, and angle irons, I don't know, not exactly easy to get back to the right plane. So what I do is I just find something that's bigger, heavier, and stronger than what you need to bend, and beat it into submission. You see it works out pretty good. So I was able to save this, and it's flat now. It had a bend in it where it kicked off like this. This corner here lifted, so I just worked a little bit. You see the stress marks right there where it was bent. It was bent pretty good, but I think we can use it. Down to the very last weld. What do you know it? Out of wire. Never fails. Got some more wire, got that finished up. As I was, you know, going up and down on this, I kept noticing and listening to this. The 2 pieces of cross member come together at this dovetail. Well, this is 2 inches this way and then 3 inches vertical, and they take this one and go 3 inches horizontal and 2 inches vertical, and then they just had that little bitty broken weld there. I don't know why you wouldn't take advantage of throwing a few welds across there and make that stronger, but that's what we're going to do. So let's get it cleaned up. All right, so I stitched that in all the way across. Just used a bottle jack, brought it up to level and squeezed it where I needed to, and that ought to work. Now I got to work on the back. This is extremely weak, and it drags a lot. So we're gonna stiffen this back up here. I'm gonna look for some material, something I can reinforce that with. So let's see what I can find.